are we being truthful with ourselves? Are we being compassionate with others? Are we forbearing the human experience, or are we trying to avoid and escape it? And then we start to become aware of the mental activity that's going on in our brain, and we start to become aware of our habits and our interactions and how all of that is adding up to our life outcomes. And why this is important is that when you get into the psychedelic experience, it's easier to lean into it and show up and do the work. If you haven't done any prep and you just go in, it's going to be so startling or so exciting that you're not really engaging the work. You're just kind of sitting on the edge of like shock or awe or fear. And so you're practicing leaning in and opening that space to just face the truth, the true reality. I think we're under so many veils in this life.
All right, folks, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome aboard the Max Afterburner podcast, sponsored, powered by the No Fallen Heroes universe. A lot of great stuff going on, folks, and have an incredible guest joining us from Durango, Colorado. Deanne Adamson left a career in mental health counseling to start Being True to You in 2010, the first preparation and integration coaching company for psychedelic therapies. Deanne and Being True to You have coached and trained people everywhere around the globe, over a couple thousand folks, including veterans and first responders. She's produced several coaching and coaching training programs, such as Being True to You's Transformational and Integration Coach Certification Program, their Hospitality, Retreat, and Sitters Training, and their one-year Transformational Recovery Coaching Program. Being True to You also provides preparation and integration coaching services, which we're going to talk about, which are just absolutely critical, to treatment and retreat centers using psychedelic treatments in therapeutic settings, and the mission and program called The True Self Forward in these times of warfare, change, and awakening. Deanne, welcome aboard. Welcome aboard the Max Afterburner podcast.
Oh gosh, Whiz, thank you. It's so wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me on. I look forward to our talk today.
Yeah, let me lead with this. First of all, thank you for everything you've done. I mean, since 2010, you literally have helped save and change the lives of just countless human beings, which is pretty incredible. No more noble a purpose or noble a calling than helping your fellow woman and helping your fellow man. So my hat is off to you. Thank you for helping the folks through the No Fallen Heroes Foundation too. And also, you helped train Nicole, our Director of Medicine Operations, and of course, my beautiful bride, Susie. And then one of our new staff members, Katerina, is going through the Trip Sitter program that you all launched recently. So thanks for everything you've done over the years. So give us a quick brief. Where did Being True to You come about, and why did you start it?
Sure thing. So let's see. I started Being True to You in 2010. I started it because I wanted to leave the mental health counseling career that I was in. And honestly, I just didn't know what I could do other than that. I just knew I wanted to help people. And so at the time I was hanging out with a bunch of friends who were like, what's your passion? What's your passion? And I'm like, to be a counselor. I don't know. And they're like, that's not your passion. Like, what's your passion? And after a few weeks, I was just so annoyed with them asking me this question, because I thought, well, that's what I want to do, is be a counselor. But then I just went within myself and I thought, I'm not really fulfilled being a counselor. It's tough working in an office, diagnosing people who are just coming in to get medicated.
Yeah.
And so I really had to go within myself and say, what is another way that I can serve humanity? Like, how can I help people? And how can I help people on a deeper path of transformation outside of the pathological model? Mm-hmm. So then I heard of coaching and I thought, that's it. And it was before it was a little bit trendy. I didn't know, and I had no business experience whatsoever, but I had the heart for it. And I had the commitment and the dedication, the perseverance to learn and do what it took. So anyway, I started Being True to You, a coaching company, in 2010. And I didn't know what I would do with it. Initially, I was going to work with young people and support them on their road to transformation earlier in life, as I had a lot of regrets when I was younger. And I thought, gosh, if I just had a coach or a mentor in my teen years, in my young adult years, what could I have done with my life? But as I started coaching young people, I realized they're almost not ready to come out of that cocoon. It's like there's a time in people's life where you just kind of have to go on that detour and lose yourself before you're ready to come back.
You bet.
And so it was hard for young people to really have that existential conversation. So I ended up meeting the Ibogaine community just by chance. A friend of a friend introduced me to a facilitator down there, and I thought, this is kind of odd. And I thought, okay, I went down there and that's where everything changed. I saw people going through the Ibogaine detox experience for opiate addiction, heroin addiction. And
where was this, Deanne? Down in Mexico or?
Yeah, I was down in Mexico. So I was down in the Baja. And these are clinics that aren't open anymore that I started with. And I saw Americans, Canadians going down there for heroin addiction. Some of them on their last leg. Some of them have burned all their bridges, didn't know what they were going to do. Some of them were just, halfway through their addiction and trying things. But nonetheless, I saw that in 24-hour period that people were detoxing off of opiate addiction mentally and physically and spiritually, and coming out the other side just clean, fresh start. I mean, literally no cravings, no withdrawal symptoms. It was a miracle. And not only that, I saw that the medicine was taking people back into their heart, into their true heart space, because they were talking about God. They were talking about their family. They were talking about people they've hurt and wrongs they wanted to right. And they were talking about their passions and their goals. And something I saw before I went into that, before clients went into that experience, was it was very hard for them to talk about any of that stuff. Talking about goals and what they wanted, what they were interested in, what their value system was. They were just blocked. And then all of a sudden, after this experience, it was like, I'm back. I'm me. I'm back again. So that's really what started Being True to You. We worked then for many years with different Ibogaine centers, preparing people before the experience and after the experience, which was quite hard because these are people that are in life-threatening situations and, very desperate. And so we had to learn very quickly. Then what happened was we were the first coaching company in the world to start doing this work. I mean, I never even heard of preparation and integration before we started Being True to You in 2010. I'm sure people were doing it. Certainly in Indigenous communities, like people have their own style of preparing and integrating. But in our culture, I hadn't really heard of it,
So you literally blazed the path when you went down there in 2010. There wasn't any like, hey, a couple briefs before or any integration. It was just like, hey, heroin's be gone from your life. Go forth and prosper. So you actually blazed a path and said, no, we probably need a little pre-flight briefing and we probably need some integration training. So you're one of the first people to knock this out. That's incredible.
Yeah, as far as I know. And then, other psychedelic programs started reaching out, whether it was ayahuasca churches or underground psilocybin retreats. And so we were working with companies all around the world. And then we started just getting walk-in clients, people that were doing experiences in their home, or people that got accidentally dosed at festivals that were in pretty upside down of the experience. So we grew fast. Then I started a coach training program in 2013 because the counselors I were hiring, they thought, we don't know what to do. This is so different from the therapeutic model and the way we were trained. And I'm like, you're my supervisors. I know you know what to do. And they're like, we can't connect with these clients. We don't understand. We need to create a training program. So I did. I created a training program 10 years ago. We've been running it for a long time now. Now it has just grown into almost its 6th edition. And it's something that's truly spectacular because we've brought in voices and experiences from around the world, people working with medicine work, to really have that discussion around what is integration with psychedelics, why is it significant, and what is the cleanest, purest way to approach this work, so we make sure that we're not putting our own stuff into people's experience, but letting them have a very holistic, heart-centered, and true experience for them. So yeah, there's a lot we could say about Being True to You, but that's a nutshell in terms of how we got going. I'm glad you just hit on, you skipped through something. We're going to go back and drop anchor on it because my podcast that just dropped yesterday was with Dr. Matthew Johnson, formerly of Johns Hopkins. He and
what's his name? The older guy from Johns Hopkins who recently passed away. He, they were like Starsky and Hutch and Maverick and Goose. And we talked about, we debriefed how, there was a recent, I call it Red Team. There was a Red Team report about MDMA, the Lycos trials and how they kind of interjected a little bit of maybe or maybe not some spirituality or some stuff into it. And I asked Dr. Johnson about that as well. So I'm glad you kind of hit on the kind of coming from a heart-centered and not kind of foisting personal opinions on stuff or trying to navigate too much. So I'm glad you mentioned that. We can come back to that in a little bit. But let's talk us through. I mean, a lot of the listeners obviously know my pre-flight preparation. I treat these medicine experiences like a combat mission. I mean, I brief beforehand, a contingency plan in case something goes wrong, and obviously we need a debrief in the integration. Just talk the folks through why is it so important to do some pre-flight preparation, and I'd say equally, if not more importantly, the integration. Why is any of this important?
I would say it's the purpose of psychedelic therapies. In fact, we've had clients who have gone back and forth into iboga and ayahuasca, and eventually the medicine's like, no. You can't just keep coming back and getting a quick fix, right? Like you have to integrate. So
you got to do the work.
You got to do the work. And it's like in the experience, it's showing you this is what it could be like when your heart is unblocked and when your mind is free and when your body is healthy, because you get that taste of just perfection sometimes when you're in that experience of just having no emotional resentments blocking you, and you don't have the fog in your brain and all the fear holding you back. And so you tap into that feeling of just being healthy, and being well, and being happy, and being light. And so then you leave the experience, then you got to go cultivate that in real life. So it's kind of like you see the top of the mountain, you see the summit, you see what's possible. But then as you go back into your life, that experience is going to wear off over time. But now you have that vision and you have that feeling and you have that hope. And it's like, I know that's possible because I tapped into it. So preparation is important because this is where you're going to get your mind right. You're going to center in your heart space and really get clear on who am I as a human being? What is my belief system? What's most important to me? What do I want to get out of this? Why am I engaging these experiences? And then what you're going to do is start to do the work. And that's what we teach at Being True to You through our integration coaching program is what is the work? I've asked a lot of people over the years, what does that mean to you? And a lot of times people don't know. It's like, well, doing the work is going to yoga class or going to my 12-step meeting.
Yeah, breath work, meditation.
Yeah, and it's like those are tools and those are environments to help you do the work, but what is the inner work? And that is really that self-awareness and self-reflection where we identify how we're showing up in life. Are we being truthful with ourselves? Are we being compassionate with others? Are we forbearing the human experience, or are we trying to avoid and escape it? And then we start to become aware of the mental activity that's going on in our brain, and we start to become aware of our habits and our interactions and how all of that is adding up to our life outcomes. And why this is important is that when you get into the psychedelic experience, it's easier to lean into it and show up and do the work. If you haven't done any prep and you just go in, it's going to be so startling or so exciting that you're not really engaging the work. You're just kind of sitting on the edge of like shock or awe or fear. And so you're practicing leaning in and opening that space to just face the truth, the true reality. I think we're under so many veils in this life that it gets challenging to see the truth. And even when we see it, sometimes we don't recognize it. So the preparation is going to help people play full out. And then the integration is what's going to make the results actually cultivate and manifest in a person's life, So it's the point of psychedelic therapies is the integration.
Yeah, I forget where I saw this recently, but I think the rule of thumb is ibogane's about a 4-week. I don't know what you would call it, happy period or, pink cloud phase. And then it kind of steps in from the various medicines to MDMA, like a couple days to a week. So you have this magic period, this say 4 weeks with Iboga or Ibogaine, where you get home and you need to create those new habits. If you don't integrate and you just go back to what you were doing before you did the medicine, it might have just been a really interesting or terrifying or unique experience if you're not willing to put in the work and actually, change some habits and patterns. I remember, coming home and, 99.9% of my wife's trauma, unfortunately, is whiz induced. And, there was a little tension there. How do you help significant others, wives, husbands, or those left behind? Because when somebody comes home from a medicine retreat, I was about to say they're different than who they were, which is a wrong thing to say. They actually are exactly who they were. They just knocked the rust off or knocked that fog off that you talked about. I remember Susie and I went to the beach, and it was I think it was like a 6-hour debrief. And I remember at various points through that debrief, the look on her face looking at me was like, who are you and what did they do with you type of thing, but kind of in a good way. So do you work with couples or all, or do you tell the folks that you're coaching, like, hey, make sure your significant other is either on board or at least up to speed? I mean, hell, I've heard some vets are like, hey, bro, I need to go do this, but I need to kind of hide it from my wife. I'm like, no, that's not good. So talk us through a significant other aspect, because you kind of need some support, or your loved ones should at least know, right?
Correct. And, first I'll speak to the window of opportunity after medicine. I would say I built the whole company off of that window of opportunity, because after we have a major transformational experience, whether it's something that's planned and intended, like entering a psychedelic journey, or whether it's like a sudden tragedy in life, like anytime we have something that shakes up our world inside and out, there's a window of opportunity for growth and learning and change. And if we miss that opportunity, it's like that window closes. So that space is really important. And that space for couples is really important. So with significant others, I agree. It's very important that you get on the same page with your significant other. I know it can be a hot topic for some couples because it brings a lot of fear up in the other partner. First thing they think is, well, what if you go in and you see that you don't love me anymore?
Yep.
What if you see that you love someone else and that you want to leave? And it's a real fear, and it rarely happens, but sometimes, somebody's not meant to be together. And also the other fear is like, do I have to start doing these things? Like, if you're going to do these things, what if I start doing these things? What if you, pull me into this and I don't want to? So that's the second fear. And a third fear is like, what if you come out a different person? What if you come out and you're not the same? Maybe you're still with me, but what if I don't recognize you? So what happens is that with a significant other, it is definitely going to bring up their fears and their inner attachments, and also their insecurities, right? Like, gosh, if I had been a good partner, and then they start going through this whole inventory of like all the things that I could have done better. And so it is a huge opportunity for growth for couples. But yeah, I would say what you want to do is get on the same page. First, tell your partner, you do not have to do these experiences. This is something that's calling to me, and here's why. And then you talk about the issues that you have maybe in the marriage, so they can see, okay, you're doing this that's actually going to help the marriage. This is great. So right there, you're going to soothe two fears, because you're saying you don't ever have to do these experiences. You have your way of working with yourself, and I have my way. And at any time we can do things together, that's great, that's beautiful, but I'm never going to come back and say, you have to do this or force you to do something you don't want to do.
Amen.
Then, you calm the other fear, which is, I love you. And this marriage is so important to me that I want to increase the quality of life for myself and for you. And I feel like I haven't been showing up my best. And I'm hearing my friends talk about these experiences. I've done a lot of research into what the benefits could be. I understand it's not going to do the work for me. I've got to do the work. But this is something I would really like to try, and I would really like to have your support on. So right there, you're going to calm the second fear, because it's like, I love you, I'm not leaving you. And hey, I'm actually going to go in and work on myself, which is going to support the marriage. And then about the third fear is like, this is what I believe. This is who I am. I value marriage and family. I value health and fitness. I value my faith in God. I value, working hard and providing for the family. I value serving and contributing to society. That's not going to change. If anything, it's going to deepen my understanding of myself. And then also there's parts we don't know, right? Like we don't know what's going to happen. And that's that window afterward where the both spouses have to kind of give some time for it to settle in.
Mm-hmm.
So then one more thing I'll share is if they want to have an experience, then you can say, if you are interested in having an experience, we can look into that. If you wanted to have a different experience or the same experience, or maybe you just want to, take 3 days off from the kids and go on vacation, right? So it's like you're also honoring them. Like if I go away for 3 days and do this experience, when I come back, I want to honor you taking 3 days off. I watch the kids and you go do something for you. And so that kind of conversation in 5 minutes is really going to soothe a spouse. And then just remember, being true to you, you can always call us. We've been working with worried spouses, worried mothers, fathers, brothers and sisters for a long time. And it does help them when they become well-informed themselves and when they understand that process and how to support you. Because another fear they have is, I don't know what to do when they get home. Like, how should I act? What should I say? And so we can coach people on that. In fact, we have a companion training that's just really short and sweet and very, very helpful for loved ones at home, because then they feel empowered instead of like, I'm just sitting home waiting to see what's going to happen. Instead, it's like, I'm holding space and I'm ready for this. I'm ready to receive my husband or my wife home, or my son or my daughter. And I'm ready to just be open to wherever they're at. I'm not going to control it. I'm not going to try to change it. I'm not going to bring it down. I'm just going to be present with them. That empowers them, and that empowers the family unit and in the marriage.
I'm so happy we are talking about this. So, and I was a fighter pilot. So in the emergency procedures manual, unfortunately, we like to say that's written in blood, right? So the reason we have all of these things is because this wasn't existing in the past, and probably there were some good lessons learned that you got that said, you know what, we probably need to help people with this. Because my personal experience, like I said, I came home from the medicine, and first 30 days, I'm like, let's go, Susie, get up, let's live. Life is great and everything's awesome. And she's like, well, yay for you. And then, the 60 to 90 days was a little tougher. It was, there was some friction. And then Susie said, you know what? I think the medicine is calling to me. Maybe I'll go sit with the medicine. So she went down to Mexico and sat with the medicine with a group of ladies, and she got back. And it's interesting because when I went initially, she never told me this beforehand, but she kind of told me during the debrief. She's like, to your point, she was terrified. She's like, I was so scared that you're going to do this medicine and be like, oh my God, I don't love Susie anymore. Here's what's interesting is I got back. I'm like, what? It made me love you even more. Everything's great. When she went 2 months later, even though I'd done the medicine and I knew that it's only truth and everything, truth is just truth. It's not good or bad. I'm this Jedi master now, but all of a sudden, I'm a little worried. When Susie went, I was like, oh my God, what if she realizes what a horrible piece of shit I was? So I even after doing the medicine, I had some worry on my end. So I'm so glad that you all help the companions kind of navigate this stuff, because if this doesn't exist, that's some moments of terror. And I'm glad to know, like, when they were sitting with the medicine and stuff, because I did my own little kind of ceremony at home. I was holding space and kind of sending love and air support to her when that was going on. So I'm so glad to hear that you all have some companion training to try and settle the nerves, because I don't think, I wish we had had you guys at the beginning, because ours was a little lacking, and it doesn't matter who it was, but I'm glad you're our resource for all that type of stuff now. So talk us through, Deanne, a typical, talk to one of our vet first responders or one of their family members. Give us a walking in the front door to your last integration session. What does that look like? Because I tell people, as you're Navy SEAL, you know the SEALs, and we need a checklist, man. I'm a military guy. I need, give me my checklist. So God, whatever word you want to use, I choose to use the word God. God years ago said, dude, you're a mess. Walk down the street, to that yoga place and start doing some hot yoga. And that really helped. Then that led to, Nicole, who's our director of medicine operations, who was my yoga instructor. She's like, hot yoga is great. Do you do breath work? I'm like, I can't sit still for 30 seconds, man, let alone 20 minutes. And we went to a mindfulness retreat, and I'm like, wow. So I did yoga, I did breath work, and then God dropped, the medicine in front of me. So I kind of came up with my own little checklist. But talk us through somebody who's right off the street, who's watching or listening to this podcast and is like, you know what? I think that medicine's calling to me. What's that process look like? What do you recommend they do?
Well, from beginning to end, the first thing is to become well-informed. It's important because this is a, kind of unregulated industry. And even if it was regulated, you still need to be well-informed,
Sure.
But, because these experiences are just so profound and there's so many implications and contraindications, a person needs to become well-informed. So if you're thinking about psychedelic therapies, the first thing you want to do is educate yourself. You can get online, there's lots of good sources, and just start to learn about the different psychedelic medicines. And then what you want to do is look within and say, okay, what do I want to get out of this experience? How much time do I have? How much money do I have? How much do I want to work on, or how much can I take on at one time? What am I familiar with? What do people around me know? What can I actually have access to? Because some of these medicines are hard to access. Some of them are very, very expensive. I mean, they could be $10,000 treatments. You don't want to go too low budget on some of these things because, you want a reputable facilitator and a good program if you're going to do it. But then there are some experiences that are really affordable you can do in your backyard, in a safe way. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot you have to look into. It's not something you just want to jump into. You want to understand what matches your availability, your affordability, and what you want to work through, because there are 10-minute experiences that take an hour to integrate and then, moves into the second stage of integration. And then there are experiences where you go to the jungle for 2 weeks or longer, and you're doing experiences like every day or every other day. Yeah. So there's a lot of different ways to do it. There's a lot to learn. These days it's nice because there's online courses that will just kind of give you like the 101 of, everything you need to know. Some of them are also illegal. So, you have to really understand what kind of risks you want to take, or if you want to try something that is legal, like ketamine treatment is legal. That's a good way to start in the United States. If somebody wants to just go down to a ketamine clinic, usually they have some kind of prep. We can prep you. So anyway, your due diligence, or you get well informed, then you do your due diligence, right? So you get informed, then you say, okay, I found a place, I found a facilitator. You need to ask questions. You need to understand, who is this facilitator? How long have they been working? Is it above ground, or is it safe? Do they have proper staff? So do I know people that have been through? Can I see the reviews? Can I do an on-site visit first? You get educated, then you get then you do your due diligence. And this is going to help too when you come in, because there's a lot of fear when you do your journey, even if it's your second or third or fourth or fifth, there's a lot of fear, right? So when you go in, it helps calm you if you've kind of done your research, because then you just know. Like I remember when I did Ibogaine, I was the first time I was really scared. I was like shaking, and I was like looking at the door, like I could still run, and the doctor just looked at me in Mexico, and I knew him for a few years. I had been working with him already with other clients. And he just looked at me and he said, trust us. We have you. Yeah. And that was all I needed to hear, because then I just thought, okay. And I've had facilitators say that to me before, and I knew them, I trusted them. And then that reminded me that, okay, these are irrational fears. Yeah. And this is also me trying to run from my work. This is resistance. So you want to know who the facilitator is so you feel really good. And then going back to the family feels good too, because they've done research, and you could even ask them to help you choose a facilitator in a center. So everyone feels like ownership of like, okay, this feels right to us. So then the preparation begins. You can do preparation on your own, or you can call a company like ours. That's what we do. It's really fun, and it's really fulfilling, and it's really deepening. It's really going to help that change. What we see typically, Whiz, is that when people want to do these experiences, there is a sense of urgency, or there is a desperation to change, or there's just a deep longing and calling for something. And so if we just do the experience just to see what happens, Usually we'll get some benefit, but you're going to get a lot more benefit if you put the work in.
Yeah.
So you start the prep. The prep is mind, body, life, relationships, spirit, all around, and some of it's just kind of obvious logistical stuff. I'm going to start looking at the contents of my mind. I'm going to pay attention to my focus. I'm going to pay attention to the thoughts in my mind. I'm going to start paying attention to my character. How do I show up to others? What do other people perceive me? Am I a good person? Am I reliable? Do I have integrity? Am I honest? Do I, contribute? Do I earn my way through life? Like there's a lot to look at. And then physically, you start cleansing your body, you're drinking water, you're eating healthy, you're doing a little cardio is really good before psychedelics, especially the heavier ones. And then you can start meditating. This will be the harder one. And you don't have to meditate for long. You could start meditating for a minute or two. You could do hot yoga, like you were saying, breath work. There's guided meditations online. What we want to do is like still our mind, because our defenses can come up really strong as we get closer to the medicine experience and in the medicine. And our defenses can show up in any number of ways, but basically they prevent us from seeing the truth and from really getting to the core of the matter. And so what we want to do is just practice leaning into the stillness and the silence of life, and practice leaning into the discomfort.
Yes.
A lot of fear going into psychedelic medicine is like, what if I don't like it? What if it doesn't feel good? What if I want to escape it? And I'm like, yeah, that's all going to happen. And so basically what you want to do is just prepare for that. When something is burning inside, maybe it's a conflict with someone, you're mad at them, maybe it's a craving for something, and you just say no to it. Just sit in that space of discomfort, as that addiction is calling you, as that drama is calling you, as that trauma is triggered, and it's just hurting. You just sit with the pain and just see how long can I just sit with this, right? Then when you go in the experience again, you're like, I can do this. Like I can sit with pain. You're increasing your resilience. So preparation, then, we talked about family, bringing family on board. You can set intentions or not. There's a lot of debate around that. Depends on the facilitator and the medicine. I would say intentions are helpful without expectation. That's a really big part of preparation. And there's a reason everyone says it, because when you go in with expectation, you will come out with disappointment. Period. Amen. The psychedelic experience, it never is like you think it's going to be ever. It's always different. So the more you learn about it, the more you read about it, the more testimonials you hear, all those experiences are now not going to happen. It's going to be different no matter what. So intentions are good just to identify maybe the parts of myself and my life I want to work on, right? It helps me say, like, I really want to work on, this cigarette habit and what's behind it. Or I really want to work on what's behind my edginess in my romantic relationship, or what's behind my financial problems. Why do I keep, having the same financial problems? And so that way, when you come into the experience, you have more courage to lean into things, and you don't have as much avoidance, because you're like, oh, this might relate to what I'm working on. So that's the prep. You can prep for 2 hours to 2 weeks to 2 months before the experience. It really depends what experience and what the situation is. But even taking that 2 hours or 2 weeks or 2 months will mean a lot. Then, you have your experience, integration. I'll just answer quickly since I've been chatting a little already. There's different phases of integration, right? There's the initial integration when you're still in the experience. And it could be while you're still at the retreat, like maybe the first few days, the first week. And you have to just really listen to yourself. So some people have been working really hard, going 100 miles an hour. And what they really need to do in that integration phase is not jump back into work and take time to continue to decompress, continue to unpack, continue to let the medicine work in the mind and body, and not jump back into life too quick, and not jump into telling everybody about the experience. There's a famous saying, like, hold the gold, right? After the experience, you're holding on to it, because when you start to talk about it, it's almost like the experience is becoming dilute by using words. And when we don't talk about it and we just sit with it, it's very powerful. In the reverse, some people have been very procrastinative. They haven't been working very hard. They've been sitting in depression, maybe suicidal thoughts, and they need to get a jump start. You need to get going quickly. Like right out of the experience, you're feeling good, go out into nature, go for a walk, go to hot yoga, call a friend, go hang out with a support group. So it's different the way that integration manifests, and a person just needs to be honest with themselves. And that's what is helpful about having like an integration coach or friends that are experienced in this, so that you can talk about that, because, it's important, that integration process. And then after that, the integration continues day after day, week after week, month after month. And the best way to keep your integration going, I've been using the term organic integration lately, which is just clean integration, which gets back to that question you were talking about earlier. And so I can speak more about that whenever. But clean integration, which is not bringing a bunch of stuff in, but actually removing stuff from your life, just keeping like a very serene, peaceful, calm integration is good. And then discipline, any kind of discipline and regimen of specific integration activities, whether it's journaling, therapy or coaching sessions, self-processing, charting, reflecting, again, all of the mind, body, spiritual practices from, yoga, martial arts, things like this. So that's a span. There's a lot to talk about in there. I've written an 800-page book on this. So.
You absolutely nailed it. That was fantastic. That's exactly what I wanted. Like in the movie Tropic Thunder, that's the trailer right there. That little section right there. Hold the gold. Man, I'm an awesome sayings guy, and I'm stealing that one, Deanne. That is fantastic. I've never heard that, but I did it, right? When I got home, I wanted to tell Susie and the world everything, but it took like a week and a half to open up. I don't know if I mentally or the spirit kind of told me. I think I just sat with what happened, man, because my experience. I mean, from getting to see my sister and my father again to, God just kind of taking that massive backpack of rocks full of shame, regret, trauma, booze, and I felt lighter and everything like that. So it did. I'm so glad you said that. Hold the gold. A week and a half-ish was how long it took. So the flip side of that, let's talk about the loved ones again, is to hold space during that time. Because I know it was even when Susie got back, I'm like, oh my God, tell me everything that happened. But I didn't say that. I'm like, she'll talk to me when she's ready to talk to me. So it's almost like a let them hold the gold type of thing. But I love it. You absolutely nailed everything that I wanted to know. It's funny because, like I said, I wish I had you back around my first experience. Now, the Mission Within did a fantastic job, and my coach Cynthia was awesome. But it was funny because the little manual they gave us, as I said, fighter pilot, I need a manual, I need a checklist. So I'd read like a page, like, okay, this is Ibogaine, this is what might potentially happen. And after a page of reading, I'd be like, all right, I'm feeling pretty comfortable. Turn the page, there's a paragraph like in bold that says, warning, nothing can ever prepare you for what's going to happen. I'm like, okay, well, shit. Now that scares me a little bit. Another page of full reading, it's like, oh yeah, I'm feeling comfortable, I get this. And then another. I think if they just copied and pasted that paragraph, but on the next page, like, warning, there's no way we can prepare you for this. I'm like, what are they doing to me? And it's funny because when I got home and I did like one of my first integration calls, I told my coach, I'm like, I get what you were saying in the manual. You had some good info in there, but you had a little hedge sentences every once in a while sprinkled in that said, hey man, by the way, there, and I understood that. I was prepared enough, but there's no way you can prepare enough. And I know you're smiling right now because you're like, yep, that makes complete sense. But to people who've never done this work, they're like, that sounds absolutely confusing. But I promise you, that makes total sense. The more prepared you can be, we have a saying in air power, flexibility is the key to air power, but planning is the key to flexibility. So go in there with, like you said, I remember I was told, go in with 5 intentions, right? Without expectations. I'm glad you put that comma and put that after that, because people think that intentions, I want to get this out of the medicine. You can't, I want, is going to lead to, a deflation if you, quote, don't get what you want. So an intention is not an expectation. So I went in with 5 intentions, and then they also told me to go in with 5 questions. for the medicine. Like when you're in there navigating, maybe have 5 questions at the ready. So while nothing can really, really, really super prepare you for this mission, if you've done a lot of preparation, you got a lot of things lying around you in a toolbox that if you're having a tough moment or you need a little help navigating, you can go reach down into that preparation toolbox and use that stuff. So I think you absolutely you nailed everything that I wanted to hear. So what's on the radar next for being true to you? I was looking at your website. I loved all the coaching programs you have. I love the train the trainer type of stuff you have because full disclosure, I'm an investor in Healing Realty Trust with Daniel and Cody and all those guys. Goldman Sachs recently estimated that there's going to be a need for at least 16,000 MDMA clinics, right? So let's be positive. When, not if, when MDMA is legal for therapeutic use this summer, there's zero infrastructure or there's not enough people like you. Are you getting ready? Do you have some big plans to scale into that? Because we need people with your heart and your vision to help regular Americans heal.
Well, good question. And first of all, I was smiling because I wrote that manual for the Mission Within. So I knew what you're saying because I wrote the whole thing. And that makes my heart smile. That's so funny. I'm like, what is she smiling at? I'm like, I'm a funny guy, but that wasn't funny. That's funny. Yeah. I helped put the program together. You know, Dr. Martine Polanco and I worked together for many, many years.
I still have that manual in my office. I got my highlights. I got my 5 intentions, my 5 questions. So thank you for preparing me. You did help me. I didn't know that.
You know, let me tell you what was like so adorable to me is I created those workbooks for a long time supporting people through addiction. And every time they would show up, I'm like, where's your workbook? It's like, oh, I forgot it. I don't know. I haven't been able to find it. And Martine put this program together with veterans, and all of a sudden everybody had their workbook. And not only that, people had filled it out and they had it sitting next to their bed when they would do their journey. I just felt like so happy. I was like, oh, this is so great. So I really love that about military veterans is I feel like you're right. You really like that manual and you like those steps and to look through things.
Amen.
And so it really made my heart happy to see how much effort veterans were putting into the experience. And honestly, that's a big reason why Martine started working with veterans was because we had helped for a long time a lot of people through addiction, and it would just take months and sometimes years to really get some progress and momentum going. And then we started treating veterans, and we were just like, wow, that's all you got to do is one journey, because the discipline and the mental fortitude is already there with military veterans. And so we saw that, wow, just like one journey, and it just seemed like to snap people back into shape where they once were, and then they would just run with it. So, you know, thank you for being a leader in this work and for playing full out, because that's really what it takes. You know, we can go into these experiences and we could just like lay back and be like, okay, let me see what's happening. Kind of like when we take an antidepressant, we just like lay there and say like, okay, is it working?
Yeah.
And then psychedelics, it's like, no, this is a very active participation process. So, you know, it's you know,
it's funny, Deanne, I call it it's the world's greatest Ponzi scheme. Because once you heal, once you put the mask on yourself and take care of you want to tell everybody, or you want to help everybody. In the military, we use a saying, you want to put the ladder down. And as you know, working in the veteran community, we're not going to listen to some dude in a drug rug, some hippie, hey, you should try this. We're going to listen to a bro or a sister veteran that vouches for something. So we're very kind of, you know, network-ish, and we're not going to listen to stuff. So, but it's interesting because I'm not going to call it a criticism. I'm going to call it a little bit of a change. It's funny because in that manual that you wrote, when you're dealing with veterans, surrender. The word surrender upset me. I'm like, fuck that, man. I'm a veteran. I'm not surrendering. And I told Martine about that and Cynthia, and she's like, oh, good point. How about accept? How about allow? I'm like, all right, that's better. I'm not surrendering. So when you're dealing with veterans, maybe we ditch the surrender word and we use acceptance or allow. That is so funny. But okay, back to the space and this whole thing exploding. Are you ready to scale, and how are you gonna scale and help people out?
So initially I thought, okay, I'll just get as far as I can with Being True to You. We love what we do. We kind of work in the alternative, holistic health sector. We're not working with mainstream healthcare and, all this time over the last 15 years, nor was anyone with psychedelics. And so I've always been able to look ahead a little bit and say, at some point, I think that there's going to be federal permissions that are granted for people to do psychedelics. I was always really indifferent about what happens because there's pros and cons of both, right? There's the pro of getting it legalized and getting it into mainstream healthcare because the access is increased for people. But then the con is like Big Pharma takes over and they start turning it into a happy pill. And then they push out all of the people who've been working with it for 1, 2, 3 decades. And it's like, no, we got it now. Us professionals, us academics, like we'll take it from here. And they just push everyone to the side. So I've always been indifferent about how things play out. And with Being True to You, I just think we'll serve and we'll do the work as long as we can, and we'll see how things unfold. Right now, we have taken an interest in working with ketamine centers because we do like people that understand the business model and can run a good operation with ethics and morals and laws and understand how to be consistent, working with a lot of indigenous communities and underground retreats and travel facilitators. You can imagine it's like business is up and down. And it's really hard to get traction with people. And the people themselves aren't really thinking about it in terms of like this long-term transformational experience. They're just like, it's just like a recreational experience. They're just going to try. So we've been working with ketamine centers now very solidly for a few years. We're doing the before and aftercare for ketamine centers. I imagine that those centers are really setting the foundation for MDMA to come in, and psilocybin. Many of those centers have started with ketamine with that intention in mind, and some of them are just learning about what is coming down the pipeline. So I would say we're already set up. We already have the infrastructure to help, clinics all over the country. My goal is to just train as many coaches as I can, because I feel like there's a lot of bias and even unethical and even immoral activity that's happening within this space. And so what I realized years ago, I was like, the best thing that Being True to You can do is train as many counselors, professionals, veterans, school teachers, yoga instructors. Like, we're just training people of every demographic. It's really great. And if we could train as many people coast to coast in a very ethical, objective, heart-centered, neutral fashion, then to me, we're doing our job. So I would say my bigger mission is to help 1 million people in the United States turn their life around. So use states of hardship, suffering, addiction, tragedy as a launching pad for personal transformation. So for me, it's not so much about the psychedelics themselves. It's about the catalyst for change. And it's about that transformational moment, those conversion experiences that really wake us up to the path of our true self, to our higher purpose, and kind of bust us out of the matrix, so to speak, because we have this like overarching matrix that's just like puts people to sleep and just makes us very robotic. And then we wonder, why do we have so much depression and anxiety and sleeplessness? And why do we have so many problems with our family systems and our children? It's like, well, because everybody fell asleep and people just really aren't awake anymore. And so whatever that process is, our goal is really to just create transformational system that's pure, that's clean, that's organic, that's neutral for anybody of any religion, any worldview to come in and have that space to work on themselves without being told, or re-educated on a new ideology. And so, we want to help people. We want to train coaches coast to coast. By coaches, I mean everybody in the helping space. We train sitters, we train facilitators, we train entrepreneurs, we train investors, we train the doctors, the professors, the researchers. I mean, it's really cool. We train a lot of special forces veterans. We have more and more veterans and first responders coming through our program as well, which is great because it gives people a solid foundation for how to do this work in the right way. And then the last thing I'll mention, Whiz, is that we just want to increase the standards of healthcare. I mean, I came from mental health care. I had a parent that worked in healthcare my whole life. And for me, it was very sterile and clinical. And cognitive and physical, and it was just missing the the emotional, spiritual aspects. I think humans are very multidimensional, and psychedelics expose that. They expose the multidimensional aspects that we are as a human being, as a soul. And so the mental health care system, the addiction treatment system, veteran affairs, the psychiatric system for sure. Although there are benefits, there's also a lot of limitations that I think are really holding people back. And I think a lot of professionals are just burnt out. I've been to the doctor throughout my life and they don't even look at me. They're just like, okay, what's your name? What's your symptoms? And like, here's your medicine. And I'm just like, do you see me?
I'm here. So
one of the things I really want to do is just raise the standards in the whole industry. And it was so great because at the MAPS conference last year, where I saw you there and you were there, one of the employees of MAPS walked up to me and he just said, I want you to know that you and Being True to You are making a huge impact and raising the standards for the whole industry of what we can do here. And I was like, wow, it's working, because that's a big goal, right? It was just like me and my little company to help raise the standards of mental health care in the whole country. But especially someone from MAPS, I had never met them. They just walked up and said that. And I just thought, that's awesome. So if we can do that, if we can help raise those standards, if we can train coaches, and then at best, Whiz, it would be providing, preparation and integration for centers around the country. But mostly I just want to be able to, train as many people as I can. Now there's tons of apps that are coming out. People want to be the Uber of integration work for these centers. And so now they're calling us saying, if I build this platform, if I build this app, can you, flood us with hundreds of coaches? And I'm like, yep. And so this is really an ideal situation for us, is that we can bring people through, and we don't just train, we do ongoing training, ongoing mentoring, practice coaching, tons of feedback. There's a lot of work that goes into it. So yeah, thanks for asking.
Yeah, and I love the standardization aspect of it too. I love the fact because it's good to have standards, right? If I flew F-18s in a squadron in San Diego, I should be able to walk into a squadron in Virginia Beach, and maybe after a 5-minute, here's how we fly locally, I can get airborne. The lack of standardization and people just kind of freewheeling it is kind of a problem. So I love the fact that you're standardized and you're helping that wide swath. I'm like you. I'm a little neutral on some things, right? I love the fact that more people, because I tell people here's a chart of the world and the United States right now, man. We are going downhill, full throttle, on fire into the ground. Here's the rise of people wanting to heal and learning about these medicines and trying to pull us out of this nosedive. So, but like you, I'm a little torn, right? Because, Big Pharma, they speak with forked tongue. Right now, they currently badmouth this stuff, but as well as I do, if you're sitting on the top floor of Pfizer, Moderna, Eli Lilly right now, and you're reading about, MM120 helping with generalized anxiety disorder, or, whatever it is, you're like, well, this stuff is coming, and we're not going to stop it. So I am a little torn, right? Because I know that there's somebody in a lab coat and a beaker. Wait, Whiz got his ass kicked for 12 to 14 hours on ibogaine. Why don't we change this molecule, call it ibogaine, and it's a 1-hour journey in between yoga and Carline. So yeah, I'm a little, I'm not a big proponent of taking the work out of the work, and we kind of want to McDonaldize everything. We want it now and immediate gratitude. So I'm kind of with you on that, a little bit torn, but we'll see. I mean, this sector is exploding. MDMA being legal for therapeutic use, I think, is definitely going to help a lot of people out. But to your point, there's a lot of talk therapy involved in that too. It's not just, hey, here's your MDMA, call me in the morning type of thing. So we're going to need integration counselors, coaches, and the whole 9 yards back and forth. So good stuff, Deanne. This was absolutely everything that I wanted to cover, from the coaching, the integration. It makes my heart smile that you actually wrote that manual. So you helped me on my first journey, which was just an absolute blast. I reread that manual sometimes. It's still in my office. Like I said, I got highlighters and notes. I even, on the flight home, I wrote in there I had my journal, but I wrote in like answered and, kind of crossed off stuff off my list too. So that was absolutely incredible. Any last remarks, comments, smart remarks? Oh, by the ways, before we head on out?
Gosh, I don't know. I would just say, since it's a veteran podcast, that my message to veterans and to everyone is that the mission isn't over. And I think this word retirement means like, okay, you're done now, but I don't think we're done. I think as long as we are alive, we are working, we are progressing. If you look at some of these islands that people live the longest to be 100 or more, they don't retire, they keep working. And so I started a separate company a while ago called the Eternal Mission for Veterans, because I spend a lot of time with Special Forces veterans, including my own guy, and talk to them about, well, why are so many people falling off the cliff afterward? What's happening? And we really looked at like a lack of purpose, a lack of meaning,
Yes.
and a lack of direction and clarity. And so there's so much I can speak to on this, but I would just say, the mission isn't over. Stay in your path. It is going to be a process of healing. It can be uncomfortable, but there is another chapter on the other side. There's a whole country that needs you. I mean, if you look at first responders and veterans, the skill set, the mentality, the discipline, the abilities, the heart, the forbearance. I mean, these are people that put their lives on the line to protect the freedoms in this country. And the warfare is definitely not over, and it's not just out there in the battlefield somewhere outside of the country. Like, there's a lot of warfare happening right here. So, one thing that I would love to do through the Eternal Mission Project is just help prevent people from falling into these like hits of suicidal thinking and depression and addiction, because those forces will attack people, I think, who are a little bit stronger and a little bit more capable of leading the population. And so we can break out of that. You can really be that spiritual mountaineer. It's that warrior that you once were, but now it manifests in a different way. So yeah, keep going and have the courage to work through these things and use psychedelics as tools, but don't become lost in psychedelics.
Amen.
It can also detour people as much as it can wake people up. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, Whiz, so much for having me. And thank you, everyone, for listening.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, Deanne from Being True to You, just an absolutely incredible person. Thanks again for all you've done for veterans, first responders, their families, and everybody. I mean, if veterans can kind of lead the way to, quote, regular Americans to potentially heal, you're actually helping everybody. Make sure you shoot me your home address. I want to send you some No Fallen Heroes merch, and we'll talk offline. I'd love to get you out to the Do Good Ranch out your way in Colorado with Kyle Quincy and the veterans and all the good work he's doing out on the ranch. So, ladies and gentlemen, go check out Being True to You. Again, 5 years ago, Whiz, if I heard me talk like this, I'd kick my own ass. The medicine calls to you. If you listen to this podcast and you're like, the medicine might be calling to you, listen. Maybe go listen. If it ain't calling you, if this has zero interest, it's not calling to you. So the medicine's calling you, maybe go check all this stuff out. But Deanne's got an incredible organization that can get you up to speed, help you through it, and then help you integrate on the way back. So ladies and gentlemen, that was Deanne from Being True to You. Everybody else she can too. Have a great rest of your day. Happy hunting. Make sure you're hedged. Fights on. Namaste and Basi. Whiz and Deanne out.